Hi Djazie, welcome to the show, Business Indaba.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be here at your office.
Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you. It's very warm, that's why I'm wearing shorts. My apologies for that. You're looking rather neat and I'm
Thank you so
looking
much.
casual.
Well, you're the interviewer, so it's fine. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Tell a bit more about yourself, where you were born, when you were born.
Okay. I'm Djazie Niapa. The name's a bit off Zambian because it's originally from Cote d'Ivoire.
Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory
Yes,
Coast.
Ivory
Okay.
Coast, yes. That's where my father comes from, and my mom is Zambian. Yes, and well, I'm an '86 baby.
Same year as me.
Yes, and I've lived in Zambia almost all my life.
Okay.
Yes.
Were you born here as well?
No, I was born in the UK, and I came to Zambia when I was about 5.
5 years old.
5 years old. So I've been here almost my entire life.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you pendle between UK and Zambia and Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, or you're mostly here?
I've been here most of the time.
Uh-huh.
I've traveled a bit, but not to the UK. Still planning to go there. But to Cote d'Ivoire, yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes, I was there on a holiday.
Nice.
After quite a while. And it was very good to actually go back to my roots.
The weather must be warmer even than here.
Well, it's very humid that side. It's unbelievable. A beautiful country.
Uh-huh.
Yes, the food there is fantastic. I mean, yeah, but yeah, it's Africa.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yes.
Tell me a bit more about your upbringing. I mean, okay, you came here when you were 5. What did you study afterwards? Like primary, you went where?
Okay. I did my primary education at Rhodes Park.
Rose Park.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was primary till I did my junior secondary at Refidum.
Okay.
Then senior secondary, I went to Metropolitan. And then from Metropolitan, I did my degree at UNZA.
UNZA.
Yes, in the School of Education. And I majored in history.
History.
Yes. So I'm a historian.
Okay, nice. So what kind of history did you study? Is this African studies or?
Yes, we did. I did African studies and
Mhm.
part Zambian history as well. And part of the courses would also touch into European history and Asian sometimes.
So is this like pre-colonial or just Zambian from independence?
Well, some of it because you have the different faculties and different courses at different levels. So we start with Zambian history, European history, and African sub-Sahara history in general.
Okay,
Yes.
nice. So as a history major, when did you realize that you had an interest in developing land development? How did that switch come about?
Well, funny enough, we did a course called Land and Labor,
Okay.
which was in our 4th year history, one of our courses, and this actually just explains the different stages in which land and labor concessions stroke how labor was actually integrated into Zambian societies.
Okay.
So where there is labor, land is involved. And when these two merge, then definitely there's some economics involved in it.
Okay.
So basically the land and labor actually is a component that actually helped me understand what I'm doing today. Because from the history that we learned in terms of how the customary tenure was organized back in the day and today, and how government is also involved and how the district councils are involved is all in one streamline that actually is packaged and we're able to do what we do today.
So basically, your studies actually helped you in what you're doing now?
Yes, it actually did.
Okay, that's
It
pretty
actually
cool.
did. It actually did.
So Gnampah, when did this come about? When did you start this business?
Well, I come from a real estate background.
Uh-huh.
I worked with a couple of partners, and we did some real estate in about 2013 when I got into it.
Okay.
And as we moved on, we managed to meet different partnerships, different concepts. And one of the concepts that actually got me going to the direction that I'm going into was customary land.
Customary land.
Yes. I got in touch with a client once that was looking for land that they wanted to set up outside the Lusaka zone.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these incentives that the government gives is if you set up at a certain radius outside Lusaka, you get some tax incentives.
Right.
And so in that process of us looking for that, we ended up going to customary land, where it was untitled, and many of the people that were involved with were the headmen and certain families in those areas that would actually be letting go of some of their parcels of land.
Okay.
And that's how we got to know how to actually engage and streamline companies and individuals to actually access customary tenure.
So explain to me and the viewers, what is customary land and what are the different types of land one can have?
Okay, so customary land basically is land that is not registered as state.
Okay.
So the customary land is also what you could deem as land that belongs to the people, that's under the protection of the chief, or we should say the chief is custodian of that holding in a certain area.
Okay, so
Yes.
if I was to be homeless and I would just say, oh, that's a nice piece of land, it happens to be customary, and I just start building something on it, is it then mine, or is that breaking some kind of laws?
Well, this is where it goes back to history.
Mm-hmm.
So customary land before was paramount. Before any government came, land was there, which was actually being controlled
By the chiefs?
by the chiefs.
Okay.
So as time goes by and as the colonial era continues going towards independence, you find that concessions are made and different laws and parcels are given to different districts, and then the conversions are then made into state freehold, I
Okay.
should say.
Okay.
So in those processes, you find that the best areas in a country per se, probably along the line of rail, is where many of the government institutions would set up. And so from that, after talking to the chiefs of the areas, is where they'll be given these areas for them to develop. And that's how you have your towns and districts.
Okay.
But far off is where many of these areas have not been tapped into, but are still under
The chief.
the chief.
Okay. So for me to build my house on customary land, I will need to get the okay from the chief.
Yes, so basically what happens is because when you go to these areas, there's different families from different clans
Right.
that come all the way from the 1700s, who've settled there or probably moved because of maybe war, disease, displacements, and
Famines.
yes. And so the breakup of these different families would settle in a certain area, and if there was no one who would conflict of them staying there, is where they would set up. And that's how you have your rural setups, and within that jurisdiction is probably where a small government is formed, which is probably the chief administration,
Mm-hmm.
and then whoever is deemed fit to actually rule the people in those areas is who will be installed as the chief, or maybe probably say the longest serving family within that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So then, how does your company come into play? Where do you help in the process of me getting a project running on customary land?
Okay, so basically what we do is we first engage with the chiefdom.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have rapport with the chief and his administration to see whether they have land that is required by a client of ours.
Okay.
So probably a company would come to us, or an individual would say, we're looking for a certain piece of land that would like to do farming or set up a factory. And we'll say, okay, we have certain areas that are actually open to certain development. And as long as you are willing to set up that development in a specific time frame, and the criteria of you bringing in the business and how you're going to engage with the community and what value you're actually adding to the community is where they'll actually go back and present whatever proposal that family or business has, and the chieftain will sit down and will either grant or not grant such a settler.
Okay, so basically, me wanting to get customary land is not enough. I also need to give valid reasons as to why I would like to go to those locations.
Exactly, because you see, with customary land, you're dealing with the community. And if we're dealing with customary, you're also looking at the vulnerable side of society. So someone who's coming to an area to come and get land that is probably going to be worth millions later on has to give back in a certain way as well. So both sides should actually win, because if people are going to allow you to come into their area, you also have to give. And giving back is not necessarily meaning, money, a once-off payment and the likes. We're looking at value addition to the society as well, to that particular community.
Creating jobs.
Which is creating jobs, infrastructure development as well. You could have technological transfer. You could open up a clinic, you could open up a church, a school, depending on your capacity.
Right.
Because usually you find if it's a small family that's going to go there, they'll probably be looking at maybe 10 hectares of land. Of course you won't build a school on that. So you probably have to employ a family that lives there to
in the area.
in the area, just to take care of them, and you also take care of their family by giving them a job.
Okay, so basically Gnampah not only looks after the interests of the client, but also the interests of the local people, to make sure that there's how should I put this, synergy, cohesion, for lack of better words.
Yes. Wealth distribution in a way. Yes, and not only that, we also look out for the interest of the investor, actually, because they also have to be protected.
Right.
So there's no way someone's going to come with all that investment and then lose out at the end of the day.
Okay. So basically, if these customers of yours come and say they want land and they get it, how long is that land theirs for? What's the process after that?
Well, it also depends on the investment that they're putting in and the longevity of them staying on. So probably it all goes down to negotiation. If the traditional authorities, so actually the chief, would like that at a certain time frame the investor has accomplished certain goals that they actually made or was set for probably development, then they could actually convert it and get consent to have it as state-owned land, which will be put on title. So it also goes with how the investor comes in and what they're going to deliver as promised.
Okay, and can the chief revoke access to the land at any point in time? Is that possible?
Well, revoking of land usually happens when land has been left dormant for a period of over 3 years.
Okay.
Because once that happens, then the investor is deemed to be in default.
Okay.
So you find that in certain clauses, and this is why they also have binding contracts when you go into these things. So you find that, of course, in the first 1 year, they won't really see much development because you probably have to recuperate the money that you spent to buy the land. But if you said you wanted to do something on that land and say you probably wanted to start some agricultural program or infrastructure. 3 years, I think, is a bit much. Because the land would have gained in value as well.
Yeah.
And probably someone else would have actually done something on that. So there's all these things that the investor also has to be aware of. To say, if you're coming in for the right reasons. And not just to hoard land and resell later when it appreciates. So also, another thing is, chiefs don't really revoke land because land is actually, they also understand land is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
As a citizen of Zambia, so are you, you could go anywhere in the country to actually own a piece of land and it should be granted to you.
Is this applicable for foreign investors as well?
Yes, it is applicable for foreign investors, but they have to reach certain criteria, which is also tied to what the government would actually need in terms of paperwork, and also your investment portfolio and probably your investment goals as well.
Okay.
Because having land as a foreigner, well, would have to go into statutory instruments of having a director who's an indigenous Zambian and having certain percentages of shares
in this company.
For you to be deemed as a Zambian registered investor.
Okay, and is there also a minimum amount of money you're supposed to put in as a foreign direct investor?
Well, not necessarily because, well, yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, in the sense that if you're coming in to probably do a project outside into a foreign country, it has to have a certain criteria. There's no way a guy who comes probably from Europe is going to just put up a 10-hectare farm and say, I'm an investor. It doesn't work like that.
Okay.
You have to obviously have some level of fund, should I say, or some capital that will actually generate money for the investor themselves, benefit the community, and also benefit the government through maybe revenue and taxes.
Okay, irregardless of the project this is, would you happen to know the minimum figure that's needed for an investor to have in his pockets?
Well, as far as I know, with the development agency, which is a DA, they say a minimum that an investor should actually come in with is about $250,000.
$250,000?
Yes.
Okay.
$250,000 is what you fit as an investor coming in.
Okay.
So it could be in assets or in cash.
Okay. What's the minimum, or what's the average amount of years this land is leased to the investor by the chief? That you experience on average?
On average. So this is what happens. When an investor approaches, the negotiations happen of where a chief is probably giving you a maximum of 250 hectares.
Okay.
Okay, that's
a lot of land?
Yes. So 250 hectares is the maximum a chief can give per individual.
Can that increase at any point in time?
You could increase, but that will have to go to the Ministry of Lands and you have to apply for that.
Okay.
But the chief is able to consent for all that as long as the right processes are done. But legally, in the chief's capacity, you can only give up to 250 hectares. If you have to get more, you actually get consent from the chief, which is going to authorize, and then you apply. But that's only at the process of you trying to attain title.
Right.
Yes, so what happens is, as an individual, I can go to a chief and he'll give me 250 hectares, and I don't even need to put in a title, because already I'm in his chiefdom, I'm registered in his area, and I'm good to go with my project. But because of certain economic, or should I say, business, what's the best word to use? Certain investment criteria that probably, if you had to go to the bank, they'll probably ask for your title deed and the likes. You can't really use customary land as surety.
Okay.
That's why many people would run to actually try and process it and use that as surety. But for now, things are getting a bit more flexible. People are actually using customary land as surety because now is when some of these parcels are actually being registered with certain organizations that are actually doing certain land audits in different areas, and actually also a way of empowering the local people who don't have the means to convert it.
And this is done by government or different organizations?
Well, all these organizations are tied to the government.
Right.
So this is a government initiative that is doing to empower people with land registration exercises.
Okay, it's become clear. I'm still interested in wanting to know how long a chief normally gives land for on lease.
Okay, so when you own customary land, it becomes your own. So that's forever.
It's forever?
Yes. Because you are now part of the community, you're part of the family in the area, so there's no time frame to it. That's how it works.
So what if I die?
Yes.
And I own some customary land? Can I then pass it on to my children?
It's in the family. This is why it gets very sensitive when you're dealing with customary land because there's many families involved in those areas. Because most of that land is actually the people's land.
This is interesting because when you get something on title, it's actually leased.
Yes.
Which is 99 years?
99 years.
So then why wouldn't it be better to have customary land? Why should I put it on title? Only because the bank says they want it on title? Is that the only advantage?
Well, also because of issues of displacement as well.
Okay.
Because probably many of these areas are not properly documented, is where things get a bit messy because you find certain big businessmen probably just go to the chief and buy out a huge place, and whoever is actually on that land would claim that this is my family land, but there's no documentation to back that up. So that's where it is a bit tricky.
So then even the chief doesn't back it up?
Well, you see, not all chiefs would be honorable enough to actually protect their own people.
Okay, because the money is...
There's those situations. So that's why you find there's certain areas that have got all these uprising because huge tracts of land was sold, and the people are now saying, how could you do this to us? It happens everywhere in Africa. But
so these government organizations you were talking about earlier, they actually also help document customary land so that they prevent these kind of things from happening?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes.
Do you happen to know what kind of technology they use for this?
Well, it's a basic registration exercise that their surveyors go there and beacon the said area, the perimeters of what that family claims, which will also be backed up by the headman of the area and also consented by the chief. And then the family will say, from this point to that point is where we have a holding, and this institution will just beacon the whole place and give them their registration certificate. That is good enough to show ownership that this is your family parcel.
Okay, so there's like a two-step verification, so to speak.
Yes, obviously the family itself and the headman of the area. Yes.